recent years with our existing customer base, we see this continuous strive to improve safety, reduce costs, and increase throughput on terminal. And with that, we've seen increasing investment from our customers towards automation-related topics. And just to home in on what we can now provide in AutoStore TOS v5, we have two OCR integration modules. We have the GOS interface module, Gate Operating System Interface, and we also have what we call the COS interface module, which is a Crane Operating System interface. We have been working on a number of OCR projects, and looking at those projects, we worked with some leading vendors within the OCR industry, so Visi, of course, and Certus and Camco. So just reflecting on what OCR can do for us on a container terminal, and of course we're talking mainly about manual terminals here with AutoStore TOS v5. The image you see here is a simulation of an automated container terminal, where of course there's extensive use of OCR systems. For a manual terminal, the gate is an obvious place where we see a lot of OCR, and very clear how that can help a terminal. The crane in the bottom there, so your crane OCR systems becoming more and more prominent, and also other types of CHEs, so RMGs, RTGs, all possible. All right, so I'm just going to focus in on now our solution within AutoStore TOS v5 for the GOS interface. So looking at a typical gate flow with our system on a manual terminal, just broken it down into its basic stages. So we start with the pre-arrival stage. Now most systems now, and most sites that we have AutoStore installed at, we of course get container pre-advice, we get truck pre-advice. So that's pretty much the norm these days. But the most optimal sort of way of implementing this is to have your container pre-advice tied to a truck booking, and the ideal would be you also have an appointment which is set up in a vehicle booking system. We then move on to the arrival stage. So this is the point the truck first hits the terminal. This is a two-stage process. The initial identification of the truck and the container, so the OCR in stage. See my pointer here. And then once it's passed through the OCR portal, the truck arrives at the gate, and as we just spoke about, the final confirmation before the truck is allowed to enter the terminal. Of course, once the truck's on the terminal, the usual interchange of the containers happens in the yard. And again here we're talking manual terminals, so usually a reach stacker lift or an RTG lift into the yard or from the yard. And then finally the truck then leaves the terminal, the departure stage, and again there's an OCR portal at the outgate, where we identify the container on board, we identify the vehicle, check everything's correct, and finally the truck moves to a barrier and it's gated out from the terminal. So it's a bit busy this slide, but this an overview of the information flow. So just looking at the systems we have in play, the system layers. External parties, so customer interfaces if you like. We have the TOS in the middle, AutoStore TOS. And at the bottom we have the GOS system, the Gate OCR system. So working from the pre-arrival stage, of course the first TOS knows of the container is we receive some pre-advice, usually could be a COPAN message or a Capino for an empty delivery. But of course, there's variants on that as well. It doesn't have to be standard EDI. Using that information, AutoStore creates the booking for the container. Then comes our follow-on stage when, of course, the container booking is linked to a truck booking. Again, this may come in from an external trucking company, pre-advising the fact that they will be coming to collect a certain container or deliver a certain container. So again, AutoStore creates the truck booking within the system, and If there's a vehicle booking system in play, you've also got the option of creating a vehicle appointment. And of course that's designed to spread the load of the gate across a certain period, so we don't get spikes, periods where many trucks arrive and the terminal can't handle them. So a vehicle booking system, as you all know, will help with that. So that's the pre-arrival stage. We then wait for the truck to arrive. So as we said, the first we know about the truck is when it drives in through the OCR portal. As the truck drives through the OCR portal, it's driven through, a number of pieces of information are passed from the gate system. So the basic things that you could obviously imagine: the license plate of the truck. Sometimes the OCR system will give us the chassis ID if that's important to the terminal, and then other important information like the container IDs on board that truck. And the OCR systems will also report the ISO codes, any damages on the container, and as Wim said, seal information as well. And the OCR portals will also measure for out of gauge now, if that's what you would like to do at the gate. So all that information in that initial arrival stage is passed to the TOS, and then the TOS will be waiting for the next step in the arrival process, which is the arrival of the truck at the barrier. And as we just discussed, that process of ingating the vehicle can be fairly simple, just let it in. But normally there will be some interaction between the driver and a kiosk. There'll be a swipe usually with a card, so the driver ID will be validated. But also that truck may have multiple bookings for that day, so the driver might need to select which bookings they're coming for that particular visit. So all that information needs to be exchanged. So the confirmed transactions there in the confirmation stage goes into the TOS, and there's some validation done. And at that point, AutoStore will decide whether to permit entry of the vehicle and alternatively deny entry and direct the vehicle to a trouble desk. If we permit entry, there will be a gate-in event that will come from the OCR portal, and we will then potentially send out a message to the external community, a Codeco message, for instance, to say that truck, that container is now arrived at the terminal. Alternatively, if there's a problem, the trouble desk, there will be some manual intervention, and that could be a combination of intervention in AutoStore, in the TOS, or in the OCR system to correct something. The truck might not have a booking. We may not have been able to identify the container, for instance. So if all that happens, the trouble desk is there as a fallback. So the truck moves onto the terminal, and then the lift load process within the yard happens. So yeah, the loading of the containers or lifting of the containers into the yard. So that's all done, and then the vehicle is then making its way to the outgate, and again the outgate two-stage process. So we have the arrival stage. Again, there'll be an OCR portal. As a minimum, the outgate portal will identify the license plate of the truck, again potentially the chassis ID, and of course importantly any container IDs for the containers that are on that truck. The system of course needs to be checking that the vehicle is taking the correct containers. So with that information we do some validation, and again the TOS will fire a message back towards the OCR system to say we permit exit or not. Again, if we don't, trouble desk comes into play, something needs to be corrected, maybe they've got the wrong container, so there will be facilities within the system to get out of those situations. And the final stage of course is, we're happy to let that vehicle out, and there'll be a gate out event on the very right hand side here, and usually again there will be a message to the external community, the trucking company, the customer, Codeco EDI as an example, to confirm that that vehicle's left the terminal with or without containers. So that's the information flow. So just reflecting on the pros and cons of implementing such a system. I think we can confidently say that implementing such a system does give greater throughput. The system is scalable, so if you want to increase your gate volumes, of course, it means potentially more hardware, but we can expand this system, of course. Once it's there, you can expand it without having to increase staffing levels. Reduction of human error. A manual gate involves a lot of human entry into the system, prone to human error. So this largely eradicates that. Of course, OCR is not 100% in its identifications, but more often than not, it's reducing human error significantly. Less waiting times. Trucks generally arrive on time, especially if you've got VBS in place. So you're optimizing your capacity in implementing such a system. Quicker truck turnaround time, so obviously hand in hand with greater throughput. Another benefit is language barriers. So when you've got a lot of human interaction at a gate, likelihood is you're going to see multinationals driving the trucks. Language barriers can be a problem, especially in European terminals. So having a multi-language user interface on such a system will largely overcome that. And then availability. The OCR doesn't go on a meal break. It's there 24 hours a day. So something else that you're taking out of the equation. Just on the cons, so you've got now an IT system in play which is automating the whole process. Means less human interaction, but it's very cold. So if something goes wrong, you can find people scratching their head, saying, well, what do I do next? So not talking to a human can be a negative at times. And of course, not all humans like computers, so especially truck drivers, I imagine, not so happy about interacting with a user interface. And then once we've corrected this pinch point at the gate, you immediately start highlighting pinch points elsewhere in your operation. I just wanted to also mention a couple of other solutions we have which complement the OCR systems, the GOS system especially. So we mentioned at the pre-arrival stage, most terminals will have pre-announcement, pre-advice coming in. But that's not always the case. We've put in a pre-advice API. So if you don't have pre-advice by EDI, the pre-advice can actually be done through the system at the gate in some kind of self-service area. So we've implemented an API to do that, so that's standard now in the system, if that's something that would benefit your operation. And in addition to that, we have this truck driver API. So the traditional way of advising a truck driver where to go on the terminal after they've entered the gate is to give them a piece of paper with a trip ticket. But in one of our implementations, we introduced an API to the trucking system that causes a text message to be sent out to the truck driver. So so the information is provided digitally effectively, and we'll give them things like the destination location, so where in the yard does the truck need to go, and confirmation of the containers that they've loaded or unloaded. So that's available in the system as well, and if anybody's interested in that, we can give you more details. I'm going to move swiftly on to the COS now, the crane operating system. So crane OCR, so automated container recognition on a ship-to-shore crane or a key crane. So this is something that we've seen introduced now over the last 20 years, I would say, since the early 2000s. Of course, this is happening a lot and used a lot on automated container terminals, but we're now seeing this used on manual terminals as well. And this type of technology is implemented on hundreds of ship-to-shore cranes now around the world. So our V5 AutoStore TOS now has this standard integration module for STS OCR, and we refer to it as our crane operating system, COS. So looking at a typical crane OCR solution, we would typically see cameras mounted at various points around a ship-to-shore crane. Those cameras are positioned and designed to do what we call in-flight capture. And this is capturing of images as the container's travelling to the vessel from the quay, or vice versa from the quay to a truck. Again, the cameras are positioned as such that they will capture all sides of the container. And again, as per the gate, it will provide captures of all the key information on the container. So obviously the container ID, the ISO code. It can also pick up things like dangerous goods labels, seal presence, and we've also got door direction and damages as options there as well. Also key to note that these systems now cater for all handling types. So if you've got some fancy cranes with dual spreaders, for instance, it can handle single, twin, tandem lift, quad lift even. In addition to that, so in addition to the cameras on the cranes, the cameras also pick up terminal tractor identification numbers. So it could be the same cameras or maybe specially positioned cameras. Normally a terminal tractor will have an ID on the roof of the cab. So the camera's there to pick that up as the truck arrives underneath the crane. And that can be expanded not only to identify the truck, but you could identify the license plate or even pick up an RFID tag off the truck as well. Of course, again, such a system's not 100% perfect, and there will always be some kind of user interface with it to do corrections, interventions in the case of read failures or some other problem in the process. Another of other key importance is history. So once you're capturing these images, a typical OCR system will have a history of those images back across a period of time. So if a customer comes back to you and says this container was damaged when you unloaded it, or you caused the damage when you unloaded it, we've got a full audit trail there through the OCR system to actually prove that that wasn't the case. So just to step you through now how the vessel loading process works with our AutoStore COS, our crane operating system, and the STS OCR systems. So firstly, for the loading process, of course the loading process starts with picking up a container in the yard and depositing it on a terminal tractor, terminal truck, and again, using the processes you're all used to with our field app. And this, of course, is on the assumption that vessel planning has been completed. We've got a vessel plan in place, and there's a load plan for a whole list of containers that need to go on the vessel, and that load plan has been activated, if you like. So we start with loading a container to a truck in the yard. The middle stage here, the truck arrives under the crane, and this, of course, is the first point at which the OCR system will start helping us. So it will start with the OCR system identifying the terminal tractor, and it will hopefully pick up the container ID as well, and there could be other information that we're interested in, but they would be the basic items of information we'd be interested in. Just one thing to mention, the OCR systems generally have some interface to the crane control systems, because of course we can identify all this information from the OCR, but it does need some interface with the crane to know what the crane's doing at any one time. So we need some kind of events, a twist lock event normally, to say, okay, I'm locked onto the container. Yeah, now I need to send a message to TOS. So we capture that information when the terminal truck arrives, and then we'll have some integration to the crane control system. We'll pick up a twist lock event on the OCR portal, OCR system. And that will cause a message to be sent to TOS, which will contain the container ID, the terminal truck ID, and that will trigger a start move event in the TOS. And that can be equated to or analogous to if you're using our tallyman function on the field app for now, a tallyman starting the move on the field app. So from that point onwards, there's no further action or interaction between OCR and TOS. and the STS goes merrily on its way, and it will drop the container into the location on the vessel. And of course, TOS will assume the move's complete at that stage, and the process continues with the next containers. And of course, to get that end of move, we do need the unlock event. So the unlock event happens at the end of the process. Again, we will get that from the OCR system, but with that interaction with the crane control system, and that will cause the end of move processing with TOS, which completes that container move process. That's the big benefit. If this works perfectly, so there should be no interaction with the terminal truck driver, because they will automatically see their container lifted off the truck, and equally the crane driver won't need to make any interaction here. They will focus solely on driving the crane, which is what you want. So we just move on to the unload process. Again, similar 3 stages, but this process will generally start with the in-flight capture of the container as it's lifted from the STS. Again, it can be tied to some twist lock event, but that doesn't necessarily have to happen. So the first that TOS knows about the container is when it's identified by the OCR system after it's lifted from the vessel. It's in travel on the trolley towards the terminal truck, and we will get the first we could know about this in TOS is the unlock event here. So the twist lock is unlocked over the terminal truck, and at that point the system will pass on, the OCR system will pass on the container ID, the terminal truck ID, and at that point in TOS we consider the discharge of that container to be confirmed, and then we step onto the normal yard process, take the container to the yard and unload it in the yard. So I would say that the discharge process is a lot simpler than the load process. Of course, AutoStore knows what containers are coming from the vessel. We'll have that pre-announcement. And as we mentioned earlier, to help the OCR system out, the TOS can provide a list of the containers that are due to come off. That improves the hit rate of the OCR system. We're complementing the OCR system with some data, so that if there are any mismatches, they can have a look at the load list or the discharge list to say, yes, it must be this container. Just a couple of additional considerations. So we mentioned that we talked about key cranes here, but certainly Alex will take you through the other offerings that are now available in terms of putting such systems on RTGs, RMGs for instance. And of course we can adapt the crane the cost solution in AutoStore to work with all those container handling crane types. So just looking at the pros and cons, so I think one of the biggest benefit of implementing such a system here is safety. So once you introduce this automation layer on the key, you're immediately removing the need to have a person down, either on the vessel as a deckman or on the key, tallying containers on and off. Productivity will increase, flexibility as well. So if you want to move more cranes onto a vessel, for instance, during an operation, you can do that without putting an extra tallyman on, for instance. So the OCR is already there. You don't need to bring additional people in to service another crane. Human error reduction again is a key one, and as I mentioned here, that this is a nice one. So increased potential to counter damage claims. So I think that would be important to many terminals. Main con of such a system, I think, once you start putting cameras on a key crane, there's a lot of external factors, weather, rain, wind, vibration. So that can have an impact on the hit rate of the OCR, and the reliability of the equipment as well. And the other thing to say, we talked about integration with the crane control system, so that will need some collaboration with a crane vendor or somebody who looks after your cranes on a maintenance level. So I said just take you through a typical gate OCR project. And this is based upon one we've done in the last couple of years. I guess the headline here is typically we're talking about a year implementation, and you can see the various phases here before you. I would say the main sort of driver for the plan is the civils work. For a gate system, there's a significant amount of civils work to get. All the lanes set up, the barriers installed, the kiosks, you name it, requires quite a bit of land on your terminal as well. So that civil design phase, the civil procurement and installation phase is probably on the critical path. The IT side of things will run in parallel to that. So, setting up the IT environments and actually doing the software development will sit nicely in parallel with all the civil work. And the training and testing phase, once everything's in place, probably about 3 months to go through the testing phases with the various systems, and I go live somewhere about a year from concept. So just to finish off, to summarise what we've spoken about, so we now have these 2 standard modules within AutoStore. AutoStore GOS, and providing a standard API for your gate OCR systems, and AutoStore COS for your crane OCR systems. And of course, not to forget the 2 other APIs we mentioned for the trucks and the pre-advice.